something like this to happen in our town was crazy. I mean, really kind of unheard of.
Canton is just beautiful. We've got a lot of trees, tons of places to go hiking, so it's really cute.
This was one of those cases that when it happened, everybody knew that this was bad. Citizens don't want to think that monsters live amongst them.
On New Year's Eve of 2020, I went to Nicole's house.
I'm Morgan Metzer's best friend. We were gonna have a glass of wine, stay inside, and just chill.
We're gonna stay there and watch the ball drop together, but I left early.
I was like, we never get to, hang out. And she's like, no, I'm just really tired.
I got home. I just didn't have any interest waiting up for the fireworks. Closed the house down, and I went to bed.
She was alone. She recalled waking up about 11:59.
I woke up because of fireworks, because I can hear them in the distance. And I got down and kissed my dog, and I was like, Happy New Year's. And I go lay back in bed.
She went back to sleep, and then the next thing that she knew, she woke up and there was this figure standing in her door.
I opened my eyes. They flung open. And that's when I saw the shadow of a man's body standing there, all in black and just lit up by the light in the background. He had a mask on. I screamed so loud. He pounced on me. He then hit me with a gun. Then he punched me.
He turned her over and he put these handcuffs on her that were fashioned with zip ties.
What was your attacker saying? Was he saying anything?
Yes, he said, you're gonna regret this. You've done really wrong now. It was the sound of Batman's voice.
She described it like Batman, kind of like Batman, trying to disguise his voice.
He would keep continuing to hit me, pistol whip me. He'd strangle me a few times to the point of where I knew I was about to pass out.
Did you think you were gonna die?
Yes, I did.
Who would want to do this to Morgan Metzer?
Nobody should want to do this to Morgan Metzer.
Eventually, I would learn the intruder was somebody that I knew.
He was not the kind of person that most people suspect of something like this.
He's standing there like a soldier, like with his fists clenched, and like he was ready to go.
When Morgan Metzer glimpsed a masked figure standing in her bedroom doorway shortly after midnight on New Year's Day 2021, she thought she might just be seeing things. But then
He ran at me and jumped on top of me, and that's when he started pistol whipping me.
just hours earlier, she'd been ready to ring in the new year in Canton, Georgia, with her best friend, Nicole Stabisevsky.
That's what we were looking forward to. And I knew she was exhausted.
It had been a long year for Morgan. Recently divorced, her 8-year-old twin son and daughter were spending a few days with her sister in Florida.
I mean, we're moms. We just wanted to hang out for a second. We had planned for it.
But after arriving at Nicole's, Morgan, feeling tired, decided to make it an early evening.
When she left, I gave her some crap. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, we never get to, hang out. And I was like, you loser, fine, whatever. Text me when you get home, blah, blah, blah. See you tomorrow.
Little could either friend have guessed that a short time later, Morgan would be in fear for her life. Her attacker had brought zip ties with him, already pre-looped and intertwined. He put Morgan's hands behind her back, slipped them on, and tightened them.
It's an outer body experience.
I can't imagine What you're thinking, what you're feeling.
Vulnerable, exposed. What is going to happen to my kids? I haven't done a will. I haven't talked to my family about who gets them. I was like, they're not going to have a mom.
Her assailant strangled her nearly unconscious twice.
It's the worst feeling in the world to think you're dying. And you feel like you're going to be tortured beforehand.
Morgan's attacker sexually assaulted her.
Who did you think was attacking you?
I don't know. I just felt like it was some random person.
In addition to the mask, the intruder had taken great pains to disguise himself.
Black hoodie jacket, black pants, black gloves.
He said very little, but when he did, Morgan says her assailant seemed to be disguising his voice, making it sound low and gravelly, like the Batman movies. He also seemed to know about Morgan's personal life, specifically her recent divorce.
He said something about your husband.
Yes, you're going to miss your husband. And I said, no, don't hurt my husband.
Morgan says her mind raced, trying to piece together why this was happening to her.
I swear I went through my whole life in my head. That's how my brain was just everywhere. I mean, 50,000 tabs open up at one time in my brain.
Her attacker demanded to know where Morgan kept her valuables.
Where's your jewelry? Where's, all of your other nice stuff? And he's ripping out stuff out of my, my drawers.
And then
The attacker asked for my phone and the passcode to my phone.
Morgan's house had an alarm system which she'd set before going to bed. An app on her phone controlled it, along with several security cameras around her home, and a lock on the door of her second-floor bedroom which led out to a back porch.
I wasn't too sure what he was doing on my phone at the time until I heard a door lock open, which was for the back porch.
The attacker had unlocked the door remotely through that app on Morgan's phone. Morgan says he put a pillowcase over her head.
He got me out of the bed, walked me out to the back porch. I was naked, still with my zip tie handcuffs behind my back.
Did he just leave you there?
Yes.
What did he say as he left?
He said, "Do not get up until you hear 2 car honks or I'll kill you."
Morgan's property was secluded, with little chance of a neighbor seeing or hearing her on the back porch. And with that pillowcase over her head and the attacker's final words of warning ringing in her ears, Morgan had no way of knowing if he or someone else was watching her.
I just listened to the stream and tried to be as peaceful and calm as I could.
40 minutes passed. Then a sound in the distance struck terror in Morgan all over again.
I hear somebody walking up.
Unable to see, she feared her attacker had returned to finish the job.
I hear them shuffling and walking, and they hit the stairs, and I knew they were at the top when he hit the first board, and it creaked really loud.
That's when Morgan heard a very familiar voice.
"Oh, honey, what happened?"
Morgan's grueling ordeal was finally over. And who would turn out to be her rescuer? Her ex-husband, Rod Metzer. When Morgan's ex-husband, Rod Metzer, turned up at her house, he immediately called 911.
Cherokee County 911. Somebody broke in over here. She was on the back porch, and the back door was wide open. She was tied up with a hood over her head.
As they waited for help to arrive, Rod tried to console Morgan.
I'm going to be right here. I'm going to leave the door open, okay?
He came up and rescued her on the back porch.
Saved her.
Saved her.
Her hero.
Absolutely.
Sergeant Dakota Livers was a detective with the Cherokee County Sheriff's Department in 2021. He had a lot of questions. Exactly why had Rod gone to Morgan's home in the middle of the night?
This was Rod's apartment right here.
That's correct. He moved here shortly after the divorce.
Rod said he'd received an eerie message about Morgan that night.
He was getting ready for bed. He was brushing his teeth when he heard knocking on his window. That knocking was accompanied by a voice in which he could only decipher the word Morgan was being said.
Concerned, Rod said he tried calling Morgan, but she didn't answer.
What did he say he was thinking? I mean, someone knocks on his window in the early morning hours of New Year's Day?
He obviously went to the worst. He thought that something was going to happen to Morgan, or something might be happening to Morgan.
Rod told investigators he'd gotten in his car and made the 12-minute drive over to his ex-wife's house. Despite being divorced, Rod said he was still looking out for Morgan. Their relationship stretched back nearly 20 years.
How old were you when you met Rod?
14 years old.
Was it love at first sight?
Yes, it was. It was scary how fast it was.
He was 17 at the time.
Kathy Metzer is Rod's mother.
We were on the way to a baseball game, and he said, "Mom, you're going to meet Morgan tonight." And I said, "Who's Morgan?" "That's my girlfriend." And I said, "What?" He said, "Be nice."
Did Rod change at all when he was dating Morgan?
Oh, yeah. There was nothing that she could mention that she didn't get.
How did he treat you?
Amazing. He called me princess, and so he literally treated me like that.
No one was surprised when the couple married in 2009.
We are gathered here today in the presence of God.
Morgan was 21 years old.
Morgan was one of the most gorgeous brides I've ever seen in my life.
Love is patient, love is kind.
Weather was perfect. It was outside, so thank goodness for the weather.
It was everything I dreamed of. My dad gave me everything I could want, you know. It was just precious.
You may kiss to your heart's content.
What was marriage like in the very beginning?
It was just awesome. It's just you two. You know, you're mourning the loss of your wedding being over, and then your honeymoon, and it's like, I want to go again.
Unfortunately, their newly wedded bliss would be short-lived. 8 months after the wedding,
I wish you both endless years of love, health, and happiness.
Rod's younger brother Kevin lost his battle with leukemia at the age of 19.
And it really hit Rod hard. I mean, I don't think he was ever the same after that. He depended on Morgan at that point more than he did anybody. I don't think he left her side for more than an hour or two.
But the next year would bring some good news to celebrate.
We got pregnant with our son.
Morgan says picking his name was easy.
Kevin always wanted to be an uncle. He always talked about it, how much fun he would have.
They named him Kevin after my Kevin, Rod's brother.
But the family would suffer a second and devastating loss. Baby Kevin was born early with a congenital heart defect. He lived just 18 days.
He actually died on his due date.
The loss of a child is unthinkable, and I would imagine tough for you and Rod.
Very tough. Don't really remember a lot of it. It's a big blur with all the emotions.
So it seemed like a miracle when just 3 months later, Morgan discovered she was pregnant again. Kathy remembers the moment Rod showed her the ultrasound picture.
He says, "What do you see?" I said, "A baby." He said, "No, look, what do you see?" And I just screamed at the top of my lungs, 2 babies, you know.
Twins.
Twins. They were going to have twins.
Morgan gave birth to a healthy boy and girl in 2012. It should have been a happy time, but not long after, the marriage began to change.
Probably about a year after they were born, which is right around the time that Rod lost his job, is when it started going down south from there.
What did Rod do for work?
He had so many jobs. His main one, when he lost all of his money, was he was being a day trader for himself.
Rod's job loss happened to come at the same time Morgan's career was starting to flourish.
I started my own interior design business, and it took off, but I just didn't expect it to boom and blow up.
Morgan's company, Shiplap and Sugar, became so successful she asked Nicole to join her.
And she was saying, like, I need help, I'm overwhelmed. And
She became business smart.
Yeah. Making money, working our tails off, doing what we loved.
Morgan says her professional success and Rod's lack of it made for a dangerous combination. She says he began to abuse her, both physically and mentally. She recalls one Labor Day weekend. She and Rod were celebrating on a boat with friends and had just returned to their cabin.
I guess we had gotten into an argument about something. That's the first night he beat me.
Did you think he hit me? I've got to get out of here?
Yes, I had my dad come and get me.
Shockingly, Morgan says Rod tried to convince her and the people closest to her that she was to blame for her injuries.
He convinced my parents that I was the one that did it.
What did he say?
You're just out of control. You couldn't keep your temper. You were just wailing all over the place.
Morgan says Rod claims she got hurt because he was forced to physically restrain her.
And I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's my fault. And my friend stopped talking to me then because he had no marks on him. It was all me.
Morgan says that's when a new phase in the marriage began, one in which she started to doubt her own reality because she says Rod was gaslighting her, making her think every conflict Rod instigated actually began with her.
I think she thought she was crazy. You get programmed to think that you're crazy. Like it's all in your head.
Morgan says Rod even involved their children in his deception.
He pretended I pushed him down the stairs. He literally rolled down the stairs. He actually got hurt and said to the kids, look, mommy pushed me downstairs. Can you believe that?
Morgan says Rod sexually abused her as well, although she says it took a while for her to recognize what it was.
A lot of times he was very aggressive and wouldn't take the word no. And so now looking back on it, I guess he did sexually abuse me.
Morgan filed for divorce in 2020.
When Morgan decided to go through with the divorce, how was she handling it?
It was the first time I think I saw her have peace.
The divorce was final in December and Morgan was ready to move on. But now, in the early morning hours of New Year's Day, it appeared Rod had come back into her life as her hero. Sergeant Livers and Sergeant Robert Hawk recall that when they first arrived at Morgan's house at 3 a.m., Rod's behavior had struck them as unusual.
Yeah, so as we were walking up, Rodney was seated in his car right here with another deputy.
Did he say anything?
Yeah, he did. He asked, hey man, are you the guy that we've been waiting on? And I said, yes sir, I am. And then he replied, do your job.
What did you think?
I was taken aback. I really was. This guy just had found his wife bound and beaten on the back porch. And you would think that my arrival to help find a resolution to this would be welcoming.
Immediately, Morgan's appearance startled the investigators.
Her eye was swollen shut in black and blue, where she still had the zip tie around her one wrist. And I was shocked, and I'd seen a lot in my career. And I was surprised that somebody would be so harsh.
What did it make you think?
Somebody was mad.
Absolutely, it was an emotional attack.
Morgan was not only physically injured, investigators could tell she had suffered psychologically after the attacker left her.
She was feared that someone was still back here watching her and that they were going to kill her if she moved. And so she laid here and waited.
Morgan was outside for 40 minutes before Rod arrived, but initially she thought it was just half that.
Morgan believed it to be somewhere around 15 to 20 minutes max. That was her perception of time.
Interesting. I would have thought the opposite. That would have felt longer for her.
I agree. Where their adrenaline's going, people perceive things differently.
The first thing Livers and Hawk did was separate everyone, seen here through this zoomed-in front porch security video. Morgan, Rod, and Morgan's father and brother who came over after she called them. Then Livers recorded his conversation with Morgan inside the house.
Spell your last name for me.
M-E-T-Z-E-R.
Safely out of earshot of her ex-husband, who was standing just outside, Morgan told investigators that she suspected her attacker was the man pretending to be her hero.
I just thought it was him.
When you say him, you're talking about your ex-husband.
Morgan said she had no idea who her assailant was when the attack began, but then came one critical moment.
When he said, "You're gonna miss your husband," I said, "No, don't hurt my husband. I love him very much." And I don't know what made me do that, but at that exact moment is when the mood of the room changed. I knew I was gonna live.
And then there was another, even bigger clue when her attacker lifted Morgan off the bed to place her outside.
And that's when I really knew it was him.
Morgan remembered something from years earlier.
I was pregnant with my kids, my twins, and sometimes you have to get help out of the bed. The way he gently held me and got me out of bed, it was so familiar that I was like, this is him. I know it's 100% him. I wasn't going to let him know that I knew it was him, because if he did, then I didn't know what he was going to do.
She told them the attack had followed a chaotic week, which began with very troubling news.
He thinks he's got pancreatic cancer. He just called me and said, "I've got pancreatic cancer." And so I rushed to go see him. I said, "You're the father of my children. I'm here for you." He showed me doctor's notes and whatnot.
Rod had told no one else, and Morgan explained that she'd been letting him stay at her house.
They've been sleeping on my sofa because he'd been really freaked out and upset, obviously.
Morgan told the investigators that Rod had spent the week trying to reconcile with her.
He kept begging me to get back together with me. Just constantly haggling me.
But Morgan says she had no interest. By the morning of December 31st, she'd had enough. Feeling the pressure of being his sole emotional support, Morgan insisted Rod share his health news with his parents.
He said, "No, absolutely not. I'm not telling anybody." And that's when I was like, okay, get out.
Morgan says Rod spent the day texting her.
"You need to get back with me. I'll make enough money. You can quit your job right now."
Fed up with it all, Morgan lied and told Rod she'd be sleeping elsewhere that New Year's Eve night.
"Stay at my parents' house tonight. I'm turning my phone off. Like, give me some space."
As Morgan shared her suspicions with investigators, she didn't know if they would accept what she was telling them.
I've been mentally, emotionally, physically abused.
Because Rod made her feel like she was to blame for years.
That's what he's built in my brain.
But that all changed when Sergeant Livers told her he believed her.
And I just melted. He heard me. I have not been heard in years. Nobody listened. Nobody heard me. And he heard me.
That started the investigation into Rodney Metzer.
Rachel Ash is the Deputy Chief Assistant District Attorney for Cherokee County. She works exclusively on domestic violence cases. Parker, an emotional support dog, is often with her to comfort victims. Ash says investigators were perplexed that Rod had come to Morgan's house that night after she'd told him she'd be at her parents'.
Why'd you even come here? Why didn't you go to her parents' house? Why didn't you check with her parents?
He claimed it was just habit.
It's what I would do.
Were you scratching your heads?
Yeah, we questioned him on it.
Rod said that after hearing that knocking on his window and someone saying Morgan's name, he tried phoning Morgan to warn her. Sergeant Hawk wanted to check.
I think that's what prompted, hey, where's your phone?
Rod handed his cell phone to the investigators.
Gave them permission to look through his phone.
And what they found came as a surprise.
It was an Apple iPhone, and it had a hidden folder. And in the hidden folder were images of Morgan partially dressed.
A lot of photos of Morgan nude. And those photos of Morgan nude, it was pretty apparent that she didn't know he was taking those photos of her.
She was quite alarmed.
Investigators also discovered Rod had snapped pictures of Morgan's cell phone showing text messages between her and another man. They considered these and the photos of Morgan to be an invasion of privacy.
You didn't have that permission. Y'all don't have that relationship. She's baffled that you have that. That's stalkerish.
We knew we had to get him in custody while we started doing search warrants and started investigating to prevent him from destroying evidence.
People make mistakes, right?
I think you made a lot of mistakes.
People make big mistakes.
So you arrested him for having taken those photos secretly?
That's correct. That's correct.
Are y'all kidding me?
Nope, we're not kidding you. This is not a joke. Come on.
But could investigators prove that Rod Metzer had attacked Morgan that night?
Watched him get arrested, walk to the car and be put in. It was kind of like, is this really happening?
Was any part of you sad?
No, not at the time. I was angry and just sore.
Even as they booked Rod for taking those pictures of Morgan and her texts, Hawk and Livers had already developed a theory about why Rod might have attacked her.
I believe he thought he was going to come in and rescue her and be the savior and win her back.
Investigators hoped home security cameras would support their theory, but they quickly learned that all the video from the time of the attack had been erased through the app on Morgan's phone that the assailant had used to unlock her back porch door when he left. Morgan's attacker took her phone with him. It was never recovered.
Were you ever able to retrieve those missing videos from the security company?
No, once videos are deleted, they're deleted from their cloud.
But since Morgan had a home security system, how did the attacker get in without setting off the alarm? It did not take long to figure out.
This is the window the attacker entered?
That's correct. Right here is the window that we found the screen was actually removed.
That basement window had an alarm sensor that was removed from the window and put together on the windowsill. So if the window was to open, it would appear, to the alarm system that the sensor is still making contact.
Investigators believed Rod had disabled the sensor while he was staying at Morgan's house that week.
I was sleeping. It was in the middle of the night.
Although the home security videos had been erased, there was other video from prior to the attack. The camera on Morgan's front porch caught Rod earlier that evening.
He had sent me a picture of a check, and he's like, it's underneath your front porch.
It was for $56,000 and change.
Morgan says the message Rod sent with the picture of the check made it seem like he was trying to make a grand gesture.
You should have all the money. You deserve everything. Pretty much in a nutshell.
I think it was to get her to come back to the house that evening because she told Rodney she was going to be at her parents' house for New Year's. Morgan returned to the house, retrieved it, and kind of made some sort of a gesture, and she walked back into the house and put it on the kitchen countertop.
Morgan's attacker took that check with him. It was never found.
What did you find out about Rod's finances?
That check would have bounced.
Yeah, he was broke.
The day after his arrest, investigators executed search warrants on Rod's car and his apartment. As soon as they walked through the door, they found a key piece of evidence.
They located this bag of zip ties in his apartment and a portion of a zip tie.
Before arriving at her house, Morgan's attacker had pre-looped the zip ties he'd put on her wrists.
He was working in the dark. He was handcuffing somebody. You never know how much fight that person's going to put up.
One of the zip ties actually was pretty unique because it had 2 other zip ties that had been ratcheted onto it and then cut. And so basically what we were looking at was a zip tie that had 2 extra heads.
Hawk and Livers needed to find out if that portion of a zip tie, essentially a tail found in Rod's apartment, lined up with one of the extra heads on Morgan's restraints. They headed to their crime lab.
So these are the zip ties that were actually found on Morgan?
Yes, they are.
This is crime scene technician Melanie Thrasher.
She was able to match this tail to one of the heads on the zip tie from Morgan's wrist.
The striations on the tail found in Rod's apartment lined up exactly with those on Morgan's zip tie.
That's incredible.
Perfect match.
Perfect match. What did you think when you saw this?
That we were going to be adding charges to his existing booking, and we had our guy. I would have never, imagined having a piece of evidence like this.
But the search warrant of Rod's apartment yielded even more. There was a book.
7 ways to
be her hero.
Be her hero, to win somebody back.
That gave us the motive, I think. It added to that motive.
Investigators examined Rod's browser history.
The searches were very disturbing.
He was researching how to change your voice.
How long to choke somebody unconscious.
The searches also included how to crack an iPhone password, how to get sympathy from your ex, and one that was especially appalling.
He Google searched cancer diagnosis letters.
Yes.
Investigators searched Rod's outgoing emails. There, they found Rod had set up a fake email account to create the pancreatic cancer diagnosis letter he'd shown Morgan. And there was more.
He had created a bill for a doctor's office to show that he was being treated for pancreatic cancer. All of this in order to convince Morgan that he had pancreatic cancer.
He wasn't sick at all.
No, he did not have cancer.
Do you think that he faked the cancer diagnosis as a way to try to get you back, or as a way to get access to your house because he had this plan?
I think it was to get me back. It might have been both.
Rodney, you know me. I'm investigator Livers.
Yes, sir.
On January 3rd, 2 days after the attack, Sergeant Livers and Sergeant Tom Harris interviewed Rod. They talked to him about his health.
You said you're diabetic.
Yes.
What other kind of health issues do you have?
Nothing as far as I know of yet.
I thought you had cancer.
Detective Livers confronted Rod about the cancer diagnosis he'd faked to Morgan.
How did you tell her that this cancer thing?
I don't know if I should talk to you guys anymore. I'm starting to get really bad at feeling what angle you guys are coming from.
Then Rod tried to turn the tables by attempting to take the upper hand in the interview.
I've already learned something about you, that your facial expressions and you keep scratching yourself when you get agitated by what I say.
I'm 100% not agitated.
The investigators also questioned Rod about his internet searches.
Has there been a time recently where you were interested in how you can change the sound of your voice?
Maybe.
Tell me about that.
I felt like the voice wasn't manly enough.
Then Harris lowered the boom.
The most significant thing that we found in your apartment was a collection of zip ties.
Zip ties?
Black zip ties.
I don't have zip ties.
I know you don't. We have them now. These are identical to the ones that were binding Morgan's wrists.
This is starting to get squirrely.
Harris told Rod about that zip tie tail they'd recovered.
And we compared that microscopically to the zip ties that were on Morgan's wrists when the deputies found her. And wouldn't you know it, it is a perfect cut.
There's something funny going on here.
Did somebody break in and put them there?
There's something funny going on here.
Like what?
I don't know.
I
didn't have some big ass zip ties in my apartment.
But new evidence was about to say otherwise.
What do you make of Rod Metzer's interview with police? For an in-depth look at the evidence, go to 48hours.com.
Y'all are making me feel like that you think I did this.
Hours after the interview with Rod Metzer concluded, he was charged with 10 counts related to the attack on Morgan, including home invasion, kidnapping, aggravated assault, and sexual battery.
As soon as I felt that gun right here in my head, I was like, all right, Jesus, I'm coming.
The next day, Morgan, with her friend Nicole by her side, talked to investigators again.
You thought you were gonna die?
Yep, I thought I was dead. But then also part of me is like, no, I'm not gonna let myself die. I've gotta fight for my kids.
Sergeant Harris told Morgan they'd watched the home security video of Rod arriving at her house after her attack. He rang the front doorbell, but when there was no response, headed around to the back.
Morgan? I thought it was kind of interesting that he called out your name as he's walking around the side of your house.
Yes. It's like, why would you think I was outside?
What was your reaction when you learned Rod had been arrested for violently attacking Morgan?
Oh, that absolutely threw me under the ground. There had to be a mistake. Rod wasn't capable of that.
2 days after Rod was charged, he talked to his mom, Kathy, on the phone.
Why is she doing this to me? She knows it wasn't me.
But the evidence kept mounting. When investigators recovered those zip ties from Rod's apartment, the bag they came in was found as well.
I brought up my Lowe's app on my phone and scanned the UPC code, and the UPC code came back that they were in fact sold at Lowe's.
The sheriff's office then went to the 2 Lowe's that we have here in Cherokee County, and they started searching for transactions.
It didn't take long. Rod Metzer had purchased those zip ties on December 30th, about 36 hours before the attack. Easy to find because he paid with his debit card. Investigators obtained the security video from Lowe's, zoomed in here for clarity.
This was during COVID, and this was during a period where everybody was wearing a mask except for Rodney Metzer. So the surveillance images and the videos that were recovered from Lowe's of him purchasing those zip ties, his face is right there in the camera.
I see a security camera here.
Next came the security video from Rod's apartment building.
There's actually one inside the breezeway there, which leads to Rodney's apartment specifically.
Sergeant Liver says there was no video of Rod leaving after he said someone knocked on his window.
What we do see is after the time of the incident that Morgan was attacked, Rodney come in disheveled in a hurry.
Just 4 minutes later, Rod is caught on camera again, leaving the building, wearing completely different clothes and sneakers and carrying a plastic bag highlighted here. The timestamp was 1:24 a.m.
We never found that bag in his car when we did the search warrant.
We just don't know where that went.
Investigators can't know for sure what was in that bag, but believe it had evidence Rod discarded on his drive back to Morgan's house. The attacker's mask was never found, but Deputy Chief Assistant District Attorney Rachel Ash says they had more than enough to prove Rod was guilty.
This is a prosecutor's dream to put up because the evidence in this case was overwhelming. Overwhelming.
But Ash says she wanted to offer Morgan an opportunity for quicker closure than a trial would bring, in the form of a plea deal for Rod.
We went through the pros and cons of letting him plead guilty, letting him accept responsibility. We agreed we should try. He took it quickly.
On August 4th, 2021, Rod pleaded guilty to a total of 14 counts related to Morgan's attack and the photos found on his phone.
He agreed to serve 25 years on a 70-year sentence. So when he gets out in 25 years, he'll serve another 45 years of probation.
I think you even described it as like a death.
It is a death. I've lost my husband. He's dead to me.
At Rod's sentencing, Morgan delivered a victim impact statement, several pages long.
Once I got started, it just started pouring out of me.
There were no cameras in the courtroom. We asked Morgan to read her statement. Here's a portion of it.
Rod, not only will this statement be to my attacker, but it'll also be my last words to whom I thought was the love of my life. The last 4 years being married to you was like living with a monster that constantly tried to break me down and fence me in. It was a blessing in disguise. I can now walk with the confidence knowing the pain you have given me is turned into power. I walked off that stand with 1,000 pounds off of my shoulders. It felt so good. It felt empowering. And I got the last word.
How was it to listen to your best friend read this incredibly powerful statement?
It was awesome because she did not cry. Her voice did not shake. And she said everything she needed to say. And when she was done, she was done.
She was laying to rest this relationship. She was telling him, I'm never going to be yours, right? I'm never going to be yours.
Rod's actions that New Year's Day continue to affect everyone.
Have you been able to visit Rod in person at all?
He hasn't wanted me to.
Why?
He's afraid of my reaction.
Rod suffers from type 1 diabetes, and Kathy says his health is rapidly declining in prison.
You're worried he could die?
Oh, I'm absolutely worried he's going to die.
Morgan says once the ordeal was behind her, she had to take steps so she could recover, seeking therapy to help her cope.
Everything happens for a reason, and God has everything happen for a reason, and I'm starting to see that right now. There's just a lot of great things that are happening with us.
She says she is focused on raising her children and helping others who find themselves in similar circumstances.
I'm trying to raise awareness for narcissism and gaslighting. I want to help women realize they're in a situation before it gets too bad.
I'm just excited to see who she continues to grow to become. She's strong and resilient, so this is just a stepping stone in her journey.
It's a true crime double feature. First, revisit the case against Scott Peterson.
This case remains an enduring mystery.
Then, new updates on the John Benet Ramsey murder.
Do you believe this case could be solved?
Yes, I do.
48 Hours, true crime double feature. CBS next Saturday, 9/8 Central, and streaming on Paramount+.
Welcome back to Post-mortem. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Green, and today we're discussing the case of Morgan Metzer, who was assaulted in her home by an intruder, but incredibly, she survived to tell the story, and she also brought justice to her assailant. So joining me today is CBS News correspondent Nikki Batiste and associate producer Mike Loftus. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
And remember, if you haven't listened to the 48 Hours episode yet, you can find the full audio version just below this episode in your podcast feed. So go ahead and take a listen and then come on back for the conversation. Morgan and Rod Metzer, they are childhood sweethearts, right? They meet when she's 14. He is 17, which I thought was a little old because, you know, at that age, that's quite an age gap. But nonetheless, they fall in love. They date for quite a long time. They get married when they're in their early 20s, and then they have twins. But then Morgan said Rod starts to become abusive, and Morgan files for divorce. And then weeks after the divorce was finalized, Rod says to her, I have pancreatic cancer. And then we find out in the hour that he lied about pancreatic cancer. Who lies about that? Did Morgan think that he faked the cancer diagnosis in order to persuade her to get back together with him?
I think in the moment, she believed he had pancreatic cancer and was worried enough about him that she actually took him back into her house to try to take care of him. And she was saying, look, you need to tell your family. He hadn't told anyone else at that point, and he didn't want to, and she started to get frustrated. Later, after this assault transpires and she reflects and investigators tell her, look, this was a fake diagnosis. We have a fake letter from a doctor, a fake email account, fake bill. I asked her that question. I said, do you think that this was a way to try to get back to you? Do you think this was just part of his bigger plan? And she does think, reflecting, that it was in an effort to try to get her to feel badly for him, take him in.
I mean, cancer, and particularly pancreatic cancer, is a tough battle. I don't know if he had like a long-term plan. I don't think it's easy to sort of fake pancreatic cancer treatment. You're going to look sick. You're going to be tired. I don't think he thought this out.
It's one of the deadliest cancers, and his younger brother had passed away from leukemia, and yet he does this.
I mean, on top of all this, investigators found that, he made fake hospital bills and stuff to try and show that he had cancer. He searched cancer diagnosis letter online. So he went through great lengths to try and prove this.
Yeah, his searches were like a treasure trove, as we learn as the hour sort of unfolds. So this case is particularly different for 48 Hours. Not only because Morgan survived, but also because she details how much Rod was gaslighting her. Can we talk a little bit more about gaslighting and what was Morgan experiencing?
She told us a story, which we have in the show, about when they went on a trip to a lake, and she said he physically attacked her. And he said that she was kind of being upset, she was being out of control, and he had to do this to constrain her. And she believed it. She started believing, maybe I was upset, maybe I was out of control. So this is a prime example of gaslighting in this story.
One thing I will say, what is unique is that Morgan did leave him eventually.
She did.
Which we don't always see. But I think the gaslighting was gradual and became more severe. She also tells us a story in the hour about Rod essentially throwing himself down the stairs and then telling their kids that she had pushed him.
Right.
And her best friend also told us that Rod would make Morgan believe that she was crazy, that this was her fault for some reason or another. And, gaslighting has become a term that we hear so often now.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I think about the fact that they met when she was just 14, and I know he was a teenager as well, you sort of have to take into account that they have grown up together. And so she's gone from being a young teen to an adult woman with this person influencing her the whole time, for better or for worse. And so I wouldn't be surprised if, what we hear in the hour are some pretty egregious examples of gaslighting. But I'm sure there were probably little things happening all along, over the years that maybe she did pick up on, maybe she didn't, maybe she just got used to.
Yes, I think she has told us that reflecting back, she can see it now, but I think it took her a while to initially, because who would?
Yeah.
It's the love of your life since you were married in your 20s.
Yeah.
Right. And she told us that her friends and family even believed him and took his side too.
Oh my gosh.
So, that's where the gaslighting comes in. She's really convinced of this because everyone around her is saying this.
Wow. All right. So let's go to the night of the attack. It's New Year's Eve of 2020. Morgan was sleeping in her bed, but then she wakes up in the middle of the night and there's a figure standing in her door. And according to Morgan, he had a voice like Batman. Rod starts beating her, and then he ties her hands with zip ties before sexually assaulting her. Morgan said that he strangled her twice until she nearly passed out during the attack. And after this sort of mystery intruder left, Morgan's ex-husband, Rod, then shows up. He calls 911. I want to play an extended clip of the 911 call that wasn't in the show.
Sir, what's the cell phone number you calling me from in case we get disconnected? 404. I have no idea. I haven't even looked. I had somebody come over, and I live in an apartment in Riverstone, and somebody's tapping on my windows talking about my ex-wife, and I couldn't get on the phone, so I ran over here, and I walked on the back of the house. She was on the back porch, and the back door was wide open.
Okay, so sometimes with 911 calls, you sort of get an inkling that it's not legit, right? I mean, he sounds reasonably concerned. Does anything stand out about the 911 call?
He makes a move that investigators told us was very suspicious, and he basically offers the 911 operator an alibi, saying, I was home and I heard a knock on my window. And we know from many of the true crime stories that we've covered that it's a token move by men and women who ultimately are convicted of their crimes.
Right.
So immediately that alerted the investigators.
Right. He's already offering so much information, and all the operator asked for is, what's your name and address? And he's already coming up with where he was at the time.
Oh, see, I did not pick up on that, but that totally makes sense. Name and address and the condition, what help she needs. That's the sort of stuff you would be talking about.
I just found my wife and she's, beaten badly. Not, I was home and someone knocked on my window. That wasn't necessary.
Fascinating.
Bad move.
Yeah. One of many, it turns out, as the hour unfolds. In the hour, Morgan said that she suspected the intruder actually could be her ex-husband when he picked her up. And she said it really felt familiar because he had done that before when she was pregnant. But was that the first time that she suspected it could be Rod?
I think this is a question a lot of the viewers will have because you feel like you just know your husband, especially someone you've known for years. But she has indicated that it crossed her mind it might be Rod earlier than that, but it was really that moment, that lifting of her off the bed that made her positive it was him. She knew that feeling. He was very sort of delicate in doing it like she was when she was pregnant. And I think if people are saying, well, how could she not know it was him? Look, to the same point is the father of her children, the man she's loved for 20 years. She doesn't want to believe that it's him. And so she is avoiding believing that it's him until she just can't anymore. She's like, I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And that touch.
Yeah. Because the thing about this assault that struck me is that it was really violent. We've seen cases where people have sort of done something similar, pretended to be an intruder. But typically, if the victim is someone they care about, they're not that violent.
No, I said to the lead detectives, when you saw how violent the attack was, what did that tell you? And it's personal. It's personal. And it turned out it was.
Yeah. I mean, he could have killed her. I couldn't quite figure out how he thought this was going to end.
I think we all wonder that. I think only Rod knows what his actual intention was on the way to her house that night.
I feel like that's something that is going to get conflicting reactions from the audience, is what his true intention was, and whether he decided to back out of doing something, taking it a step further in the moment or not.
Because she said, I love my husband, don't hurt my husband.
Right. She said she could feel the room change after that was said.
Investigators, of course, go through Rod's phone while they're at the scene, and they find photos of Morgan on his phone that appear to be taken without her consent. This is in the hidden folder. If you have an iPhone, there is a folder literally labeled hidden when you go through your folders. And if you are hiding evidence there,
it will be found.
Yeah, it's not the best place. Not the best place. So there are these photos of Morgan. They're able to arrest him for invasion of privacy because of that. They do this in order to get him in custody so that he does not destroy any additional evidence. Is that sort of a common practice? Like if you can nab a suspect on something else? And what did you think of that tactic?
By doing that, they were able to then get a search warrant on his car and his apartment. If he was free, he could go back and destroy some of the evidence, the zip ties, et cetera, that were found in his apartment. So this was great for the investigators because now they can go in and search his car, search his apartment, and they found some of the key evidence that, the incriminating evidence for it.
I think any good investigator immediately looks at an iPhone, a cell phone, because it's really a roadmap of our minds, our movements. It tells a whole story.
Welcome back, everyone. 2 days after Morgan's attack, sergeants interviewed Rod Metzer. Now, we saw portions of this interview in the hour where Rod is actually argumentative with the investigators. He's trying to get the upper hand, almost trying to intimidate them. What was your reaction to his behavior during the police interview?
It was really interesting to watch. I mean, he denies having zip ties at his apartment. I don't know how they got there. That's what he keeps telling investigators. I don't know how. And they're like, well, who put him there?
That was the biggie. I felt like a lot of the other evidence he could have made an excuse for, but why do you need zip ties?
Yeah. And his response is like, I don't know. There's something fishy going on here. And the cops are like, well, do you think we put them there? And he was like, I don't know. I don't know anything. And then they also found a book in there called 7 Ways to Be Her Hero, which... Again, he said, oh, of course I'm reading that. I'm trying to win my wife back. Like, of course I'd be reading that. And then he points out that it wasn't open. He never even opened it. But when they brought up, we found the zip ties, that's the moment when he was really like, I don't want to talk to you guys anymore. I want a lawyer. And that's when he starts getting really upset and really starts realizing he's their prime suspect.
I think what struck me is that anyone who watches true crime knows that sometimes in interrogations, investigators might say something that isn't entirely true to try to get something out of someone they're questioning. But in this case, 7 Ways to Be Her Hero is not a book most people have. And Rod Metzer knew he had that book. Rod Metzer knew he had zip ties. Rod Metzer had to have known what they were saying were facts and that they knew they were onto him and that they'd seen this evidence. And the fact that he was still playing dumb, essentially, for lack of a better word, just didn't make any sense to me. Like, I didn't understand you're not helping yourself. And it was, honestly, his demeanor was just pretty brazen, I think.
Yeah. Speaking of the evidence, investigators found Rod's browser history and that he searched, and this is a quote, how long to choke someone unconscious. Rod was ultimately charged with 10 counts relating to the attack, including kidnapping, aggravated assault, sexual battery. How come he wasn't charged with attempted murder?
I think it's a great question. It's a question that Morgan herself asked the investigators, and they told her that essentially because Rod, he had a gun, didn't shoot her, one, and two, took her off the bed and put her out on the porch knowing she was fully alive, saved him from an attempted murder charge. And she said, well, but what about the strangulation? Like, she thought, as she told me in the hour, she was going to die.
Yeah.
And they said, well, that's the aggravated assault charge. That's for the strangulation. But I think it's a really good question. I think Morgan really struggled with that because I think she believed, certainly at some points, that he intended to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it might have been hard, too, on their part, the investigators and the DA, too, to take that step in court, prove the attempted murder charge.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance he might have fought that, too, and let it go to trial if that was included.
Oh, yes. Maybe they didn't think they could get a conviction on an attempted murder charge, but they did get a deal. Rod Metzer was offered a plea deal, and he accepted it. So they didn't have to go through a trial. And he got a pretty hefty sentence, right? 25 years in prison with an additional 45 years of probation. 25 years is a long time, but he's still going to be, a middle-aged man when he gets out. Is Morgan concerned about her safety?
I asked her sort of just how she's feeling. I don't think she's actively concerned about her safety. He is not allowed to contact her. I think she hopes that he'll respect that. I think at the moment she feels okay. I think right now she's just sort of in the present and trying to take care of her kids. 25 years is still a long time. So I think right now she's okay.
And he's not allowed to contact Morgan or the kids in any way.
Yeah, so after the 25 years in prison, he then has 45 years of probation, and he's not allowed to contact Morgan, even during the probation.
So basically that is the end of his relationship with his children as well.
It seems that way, yes.
Did she talk about what kind of father he was?
She did say during the interview that he was a good father.
The thing with these cases is there's never a good answer to why. But why would you mess up that relationship as well?
I know. I struggle with that too, is we're parents, so it's hard to imagine. And the one thing I'll say about Morgan, and I respect this, I'm sure a lot of the audience will, that even given what she's gone through and Rod's in prison having pleaded guilty to these crimes, she's told us that whenever her children, who, are young still, bring up their dad, she talks about the memories. Like, she tries to keep him in a good light for them, the dad that he was, the dad that they knew. And I think that really shows a lot of grace on her part.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of the things that you managed to do is you actually interviewed Rod's mom, and I want to talk a little bit more about that. I'm curious if the kids have a relationship with his family.
At the moment, according to Rod's mom, they don't. It was clear to me that Rod's mom, Kathy, would love to see her grandchildren, but I think out of respect for Morgan, she hasn't. And I'm sure that's difficult for her. How that will transpire in time, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because she would have known Morgan all this time too, since Morgan was 14. It's got to be heartbreaking. I'm glad she spoke, because I think often when we see cases like this, you do think, well, what kind of family did that person come from? And it's clear that she loves her son. Why do you think she spoke to 48 Hours? What did she want to get across? Does she believe he's guilty?
I asked her several times if she thought Rod was guilty. She never said either way that she did believe he was guilty or not guilty. What she did say is that he pleaded guilty. That was her response to my repeatedly asking her about his guilt. I think she spoke to 48 Hours because she's still his mom. She still loves him. She did tell me that he'd been through quite a bit of trauma. We know, when we talk about in the hour, that his younger brother died of leukemia. They had been very close. She said that hit him very hard. We also learn in the hour that Morgan and Rod lost a baby at 18 days, obviously crushing for anyone. So I think that she feels her son was broken in a way and wanted to make sure that someone spoke for him.
And he's the last one in her immediate family, because Rod's father, her husband, also passed away. So, it's Rod and the twins.
Boy, she's been through a lot.
So much. It was really, my heart broke for her because she has lost both sons in a way. She lost a grandchild. She lost her husband. and her only surviving son is in prison. She speaks to him by phone often in prison, and she's worried about him.
Did she talk about how those conversations go with Rod from prison?
We were able to listen to snippets of a small number of calls between Rod and his mom, and this was earlier on when he was in prison. And initially, it's a mom worried about her son. She's trying to figure out what's going on legally. She's trying to see what he needs. He's diabetic, and I think currently she's mostly worried about his health. She has told me she's worried he will die in prison. His diabetes has gotten so bad, and she says the prison isn't providing the care that he needs, the medical care that he needs.
Morgan is incredibly courageous telling this story. She does not have to do this. I'm sure she wants to go on with her life. How is Morgan doing right now?
I saw her again after we sat down for quite some time. We chatted again in Georgia and asked her how she's doing. And she said, things were going pretty well. She's trying to rebuild her life. She wants to help other women and men who've been through something like this, gaslighting. She spoke at a domestic violence event recently to share her story and try to help women. And she said she hopes to write a book too.
I mean, I could really see her doing it because I thought to myself in the interviews with you that she looks remarkably well for someone who has gone through such trauma. And I think what I saw was strength.
She's remarkably strong. And I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because we talked for, it had to have been about 2 hours the first time we sat down. And I don't know that she was emotional at all, maybe briefly. And I was struck by that. And I believe I said that to her in the interview. I'm struck by how strong you are. It's amazing given what you've been through. And then we learned that during her victim impact statement in court, she doesn't cry once. She's just strong. It's notable and it's noticeable how strong she is.
And she's also been just so great working with us throughout this because she wants people to know about this. A lot of people are now going to learn about gaslighting. She wants this story to be told to help others, because people can start noticing the signs before it gets worse.
Exactly. It's a good reminder. Do not ignore the little red flags because they can become big red flags. And in this case, she's really lucky to be alive.
Very lucky to be alive, yeah.
Well, thank you, both of you, for helping her tell her story. And it's always great having you guys here. Thanks.
Thanks, Anne-Marie.
Thanks for having us.
If you like this series, Postmortem, please rate and review 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts and follow 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also listen ad-free on Amazon Music, Wondery Plus in the Wondery app, or with a 48 Hours Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening.